want to thank everyone for being here, and I would like to introduce the president of the League of California Cities, as well as the mayor of the town of Yountville, John Dunbar. John?
Jill, thank you very much. And thank you all, and welcome to everyone that is joining us on our call today. It's very much appreciated that you take the time to hear our message today. During this pandemic, cities have stepped up by enacting emergency orders, establishing COVID-19 testing sites, protecting public health workers and residents, and supporting local economic activity to operate safely. These actions have saved lives and supported small businesses, but they've also resulted in significant unplanned expenditures that are depleting city budgets. At the same time, California cities are facing a devastating decline in tax revenues, a projected $7 billion in revenue shortfalls over the next 2 years that grows worse as our public health orders remain in effect. Cities are already being forced to retool budgets, cut city staff, and reduce critical public services our residents depend on. In my tourism-focused town of Yountville in the Northern California Napa Valley, approximately 75% of our general revenues disappeared almost overnight as state orders shut down our hotels, restaurants, retail, and other business activity. Despite the severe losses to our town budget, we allowed our shuttered hotel operators to defer hotel tax payments because of the closures, which happened to be during a time when we would typically see 80 to 90% occupancy. And that, as you can imagine, stretched our limited fund balances even further. To support our other small businesses that were temporarily closed, then reopened, and now have limited operations, we created a business support program to permit outdoor service so they could rehire employees and recover even just a small portion of their regular revenues. Now we are at risk of losing the funding support essential for Napa County's COVID-19 mobile testing as we try to control our positivity rate and protect the health of our residents and our workforce. Our entire nation is in a crisis. Our national leaders must return to the negotiating table and come to an agreement that provides cities of every population size direct and flexible federal resources to offset expenses and these revenue shortfalls. We urge Member LaMalfa to stand up for recovery not only in his region, but all over California by supporting a return to negotiations and including $500 billion in direct, flexible funding to local governments in this next coronavirus relief package. Federal relief is critical to local governments so we can maintain core services and guide the reopening and economic recovery in all of our communities. National economic recovery does not happen without a commitment from the federal government to address the significant and ongoing revenue shortfalls and the skyrocketing costs that local governments have experienced. Cities have been told for months that our time will come. Well, our communities can't afford to wait any longer. Millions of Americans in cities of all sizes are depending on both the White House and Congress to proceed with negotiations immediately and provide the support our communities need and deserve. So thank you again for being with us today, and I'll hand it back to Jill.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dunbar. And with that, I would like to now introduce the League of California Cities Executive Director, Carolyn Coleman. Carolyn?
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Mayor Dunbar, for those remarks. Hello, everyone, and appreciate all of you joining us today. As Mayor Dunbar has mentioned, this pandemic is devastating lives. It's also, frankly, blowing a hole through city budgets and the resources needed to slow the spread of COVID-19 and to help our communities recover from this pandemic. In a recent survey of California cities, 9 out of 10 cities, 9 out of 10, say they will have to cut staff or decrease city services to residents, and nearly 3 in 4 report that they will have to do both without additional resources. That means fewer first responders. That means reduced frequency of garbage pickups, delayed repairs to our streets and our sidewalks, delayed inspections and permitting, and limited hours for parks and senior centers. These are just a few of the core services at risk in our local communities. As we all know, cities are the economic engines of our state and the backbone of our country. But there can be no economic recovery without a clear commitment from the federal government to help cities address the staggering revenue shortfalls that you've heard Mayor Dunbar speak to and several other city officials will speak about today, and also the skyrocketing cost that local governments have been forced to incur through the shutdown of our economies and communities because of COVID-19. And that's why we're here today, calling on Representative LaMalfa, along with his House and Senate colleagues, as well as the White House, to get back to the negotiating table and to include $500 billion in direct and flexible funding for cities and counties across this country in the next relief package. Cities have supported and protected our residents and businesses throughout this pandemic, and we will continue to do so. But as Mayor Dunbar mentioned, it is now time for the federal government to step up and support our cities so that we can continue to be a strong partner in recovery and in jumpstarting our local economies. Thank you again for joining today's call, and back to you, Jill.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. And now I'd like to introduce the Grass Valley Council member, Jan Arbuckle, and the immediate past president for the League of California Cities. Jan?
Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Congressman LaMalfa for the introduction of the Bipartisan Emergency Wildfire Safety Act. This is going to help us in more ways than we can know now. Today, I stand representing cities, firefighters, businesses, and community services, compelling you to support the federal corona relief package, which includes $500 billion, ensuring that flexible funding would go to each and every local government to support critical local services and jumpstart the recovery, not only in California communities, but in cities across the country. I know you are aware Grass Valley is facing multiple crises, mounting expenses related to COVID, declining tax revenues, but there are indirect impacts resulting in trying to meet the governor's orders. For example, restaurants can only operate outside. Well, this is pleasant with our current weather, but what happens during inclement weather? Not only does this create a major communication and education process, but it also requires numerous indirect costs of additional policing, more garbage removal, additional street cleaning, all unfunded costs for the most part. And we have additional concerns going into wildfires and evidently PSPS. Although Grass Valley has stepped up by enacting emergency orders, by setting up testing sites, supporting vulnerable and helping businesses stay afloat, all in the effort to protect our residents. However, they resulted in significant unplanned expenditures that are depleting our city's budget. On April 14th, the Grass Valley City Council approved a local financial emergency and associated layouts. Despite efforts, the negative effects of COVID, it remains a real threat. Our local businesses have experienced substantial losses as a result of the economic impacts of COVID. The city has experienced a drop in economic activity due to the closure of various establishments, which has greatly impacted the city's general fund revenues. The city has suffered an estimated $290,500 drop in general revenues, sales tax and TOT, et cetera, for fiscal year 2019-20, and anticipates a continued decline in sales tax and TOT revenues for 2021 to amount to an additional $650,000, which is significant to the viability of a small rural city. The city froze 7 vacant positions, including 1 police officer and 3 firefighters, and laid off 4 administrative positions. These actions were necessary to mitigate the expected general fund losses. Even though the city acted quickly in April 2020 to mitigate the impacts of COVID, we don't know if the city's early actions were enough. The importance of local communities, local revenue, and local employment on the national economy, national revenues, and national employment cannot be overstated, which is why cities of every size need direct and federal resources now to offset expenses and address revenue shortfalls. There can be no national economic recovery without a clear commitment from the federal government to address the staggering revenue shortfalls and skyrocketing costs that local governments have been forced to incur due to the shutdown of our economies and our communities. We have been told for months now that our time will come. Well, our communities are running out of time. The time is now. Thank you for your time. Back to you, Jill.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Arbuckle. And now I would like to introduce the Mayor of Wairika, Joan Smith Freeman. Mayor Freeman, if you can unmute your mic there, Joan. Thank you very much. Oh.
Okay, unmute. There, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me here today. I agree with everything that Mayor Dunbar and Council Member Jan has said. And we have a very small town in extreme northern California. In fact, we're only 30 miles, 28 miles to be exact, from Ashland, where a lot of people go through. However, everything has been cut in our city. As a matter of fact, I agree with Mayor Dunbar. We also have deferred the TOT taxes until October for our hoteliers as well, trying to help them stay afloat. Our small city has already had to make cuts to our first responders. We also have unfilled positions, and we have frozen all positions right now. So we're not hiring. We've laid off all part-time positions and frozen future positions and positions that are not filled right now. We feel that our first responders are key in our small city, especially because we sit in the middle of fire country. And I would like to say thank you also to Congressman LaMalfa for his bill regarding fires and how to better take care of our areas. It's really key, but we also have to support our businesses. And this is a time when people and businesses depend on us. Our small city of Wairika is the seat of the whole county. And so our citizens from all over the county come to us, and when we don't provide services, the whole county suffers. At this time, we shouldn't be cutting back on police officers or projects that employ our citizens. It's a really difficult time for us. Our citizens, we've got great people in our city, and they're all struggling right now. Some of our businesses have already closed and will probably not be reopening. We would like for that to stop. When we lay off employees, when we as the city and one of the largest employers in the city, because now we're looking, the next step would be furloughs and layoffs. It impacts every business in our city. It impacts restaurants. And as Jan said, our restaurants now have to go outside, and that's a huge impact. Most of them have already done that, but it's a different way of doing business. And plus, we have to limit the number of people that can be outside. They have to be in, some of them don't have very large areas outside on the sidewalk. It impacts service stations, gas stations, garages, grocery stores, vendors, and many more. And most of them, I would say all of them, are struggling right now. So I agree with everyone. It's really tough times. We've been waiting patiently, I think, because we've been told by Congress that our time will come. Mostly the larger cities are being, all of the larger cities pretty much are being given money so that they can recuperate from this. But we are not, and it's time. It's time for us now. We've been flexible. working, we've been partnering with our businesses, and now we need the direct and flexible funding from Congress. We need this to come down as soon as possible before we lose more of our businesses and more of our employees and staff members. So thank you all for being here today and for listening to us. We're seriously hoping that this is going to go forward and the funding will come down to our cities, all of our cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Freeman. And at this point, I'd like to introduce someone from the business community in Wairika. We have the CEO of Hotel Management Solutions, Amon Dillon. Amon?
You have to unmute yourself.
I think, Amon, you might be muted. There you go.
Yes, I am unmuting myself. Thank you for hello, can you hear me?
I know we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you for making me part of this presentation. I am delighted and I'm glad that, you know, together we are making this effort in taking our voice up the chain. Our city, just like other small cities, depend on local businesses and vice versa. You know, our city's revenue is significantly less than prior years because our hotel revenue is 70% less than typical year, which I know personally because we own 2 hotels in the city, which is directly impacting City of Wairika's revenue stream. And it is then impacting the cut in services to our employees with lack of childcare and hiring freeze at the city's police department, which is a huge concern because we just opened a travel center last week, and we wanted to, you know, continue these, start on the right foot, and make sure that no criminal activity starts in our parking lot, as it happens with travel centers. And which now the city depends on federal funding to continue to provide services to businesses like ours in tourism and the travel center, so we can continue to generate revenue in a safe environment. The pandemic is devastating lives and is blowing holes in private businesses like ours. You know, we did not plan for this budget shortfall, and nobody could. So we need our federal government representatives to come to the negotiation table to provide much needed funding for cities of all sizes. And I just want to make sure that our voice is taken up the chain, so our representatives are, you know, listening and providing the funding that we need.
Okay, thank you so much, Amon, for that. At this point, I'd like to introduce our California Park and Recreation Society Advocacy Team Chair, Cindy Bagley, and she is also the City of Rohnert Park Deputy Director of Community Services.
Hi, thank you. So we've heard a lot about revenue shortfalls and budget cuts, and some city services such as Parks and Recreation are typically not considered essential, especially in budget cut years, and are typically the hardest hit. And yet the services that we provide are really the soul of our community's quality of life. Families, especially those with low incomes, they really depend heavily on childcare and recreational activities operated by city park and recreation departments. Parks and recreation programs are essentially disappearing at this point because of depleted city budgets, and federal funding for cities would not only keep park and recreation professionals off the unemployment line, but also potentially members of our community who are now faced with a decision to choose between work and childcare at home if our services are not available to them. We are a vital community service, and we are committed to a positive quality of life. We're also the fabric that interweaves economic development, social equity, health and wellness, both physical and mental, and crime prevention in our cities. And our services reach every single segment of our population. From the onset of COVID, cities have responded to take care of our residents. That includes Parks and Recreation and library services. We created virtual programs as well as care packages to drop off at people's homes to really keep families active and engaged while they were during the shelter-in-place orders. We've also partnered with nonprofits to help the food challenge families and individuals in our communities. We've identified that seniors are amongst the most vulnerable population in this pandemic. And while our senior centers are closed, Parks and Recreation services are trying to find other ways to stay connected to these folks so that we can help combat isolation and depression, which brings about a whole nother set of problems for our most vulnerable population. We're also continuing to partner with schools to assist with new distance learning programs. We've just rounded out, most of us, with our summer programming, which really provided essential childcare through our day camp programs. Those are now ending as school starts. If you've been in a park recently or on the weekend especially, you'll notice that our city, regional, statewide parks, trails, and open spaces, they're being utilized more than ever, especially by our residents who are impacted by the indoor closure of fitness facilities. It's really imperative that cities are able to maintain our parks, trails, and open spaces because it's our responsibility to ensure that those spaces are safe for public use. It also serves to re-energize our mental wellness in addition to providing physical fitness for our residents. The mental aspect of this is just as important as the physical, and really revenue shortfalls are threatening our city's ability to keep up services that really help prevent mental problems in people who are being shut down and laid off and stuck in their homes. Our residents are really looking to us now more than ever, and if we're not part of this relief packages, our staff and services in Parks and Recreation can be even more significantly impacted, if not eliminated completely. We really are urging you to not let our California city suffer in that way. As I mentioned earlier, our Parks and Recreation programs and services really are a vital community service, especially in that we provide low-cost options that give equal access to services to provide the physical well-being and mental well-being for our low-income families. Losing our services could potentially put them in even greater need. We need your support to continue offering services to those in the state who need us most. Our statewide mission in Parks and Recreation, and really as city professionals in general, is to make the lives of our residents better both now and in the future. And our communities have arguably never needed our assistance to make their lives better more than they do right now. So thank you for hearing us, and we really urge you to bring cities as part of this relief package. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce the 10th District Vice President, Captain Lima, Frank Lima, from the International Association of Firefighters. Captain Lima?
Yes, thank you, Jill. And I'd be remiss to not thank the League of Cities for including the International Association of Firefighters on this important topic. Good morning, everybody, or essentially good afternoon now. I represent every firefighter from New Mexico, Arizona, California, Hawaii, and Guam, and we all have our challenges out there. But the California firefighters have been on the front lines of this COVID-19 response, ensuring the health and safety of our communities 24/7 since the beginning, and we have not had the opportunity to work out of our homes. Many of our firefighters have even contracted the disease while protecting their communities, including Los Angeles firefighter Jose Perez, who recently lost his life. It's clear that this pandemic's not going away. As the COVID-19 infection rates rise at an alarming rate and wildland fire season gets underway, we stand ready to answer the call. This would be a disastrous time to cut any fire departments or public safety or any city services right now. We need firefighters on the line to help mitigate this pandemic, the upcoming wildland season, and simply to answer the day-to-day calls that our community needs us for. We strongly urge all 53 congressional members of California, especially Congressional Member Lamalfa, to support the critical public safety and local services by including the $500 billion in direct flexible funding to local governments. Cities shouldn't be forced to cut services that protect the health and safety of their communities. People's lives are on the line right now. Bottom line, that means longer response times if firefighters and EMS are cut. So we urge you to support local recovery now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Lima. And now before we go to the Q&A portion of the press conference, I would like to pass it over to Mayor Dunbar for some concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thanks to all of the city leaders that have represented their communities, not just on this call, but every day. We continue to serve and protect, and thank you all for that. It's critical. We are in a crisis, and frankly, it's surprising that cities have not already received direct and significant support through Congress. These are costs, these are revenue losses that are directly related to the pandemic. And we know that communities recover, public health is delivered at the local city and town level. So we continue to urge our federal partners to lead, to get back to the negotiations, to not walk away from responsibility at the most critical time for our residents, their residents as well. The state of California, while we did in fact see some of the CARES Act funding come to California and other states, most of that money was restricted to populations over 500,000. That's only 6 of 482 cities in California. There is still money to go to counties, and that's appreciated as our colleagues and partners, especially in this public health response. But we are incurring very direct costs at the very local level, on our streets, in our residences, in our small businesses, that cities just are not built to support on our own. We need our federal partners to step up. We need that to happen immediately. Every day this continues, more people are suffering, more businesses are likely to close, potentially for good. Frankly, it's potentially for bad, forever. We need to try to do what all that we can to avoid that from happening, to avoid the impacts of COVID-19 to continue to get even worse in our communities. So again, thank you for paying attention. Thank you for passing along and sharing this message that we urge Congress and the White House to act now. Thank you very much.